All right, good morning, everyone. I'm Jan Erickson from Stepping Aside, and welcome to Somewhat Daily Tarot and Rune for the 10th day of August 2008. I have a duck chewing on my feet down there. The mama duck and her baby are over here visiting today while we're doing this. So today is Friday, and I'm going to use a different deck today. I'm going to use the Morgan Greer deck instead of the Rider-Waite deck for just a little more color in today's reading. The Morgan Greer deck is much more colorful than the original Rider-Waite. They're basically, the interpretations are basically the same. I just find that sometimes it's nice to have a little more color in our lives. So, hi. You're not going to try to jump up here? No, ow, no. Oh my goodness. They want me to feed them. They're wild. They don't understand they're not wild. Well, she may not be. The mother may not actually be. We've got a couple ducks here that we think probably were domesticated ducks. One we know for sure is. And but this one, she did not hang around the rest of the group that sort of hangs out here in our ponds. And she tried to stay away from the males and everything. Well, obviously, there's one got through, so because she has one baby. Usually they have quite a few, 6, 7, 8, 10. They can have a whole bunch. But this one, hi mama, all she had was one, and he has taken up with us for some reason, and she is too. So I guess we have 2 ducks now, along with 15 chickens and an untold number of bees. So all of our bees died last year in the winter, and we had 5 hives going into winter, and we didn't have any coming out, and that happens. There's no real evidence of why it happened, but it did. Sometimes they lose their queen. That's what it kind of looks like. We don't see any evidence of anything else, no disease or anything like that. So we just make a habit of buying a package of bees once a year, and we installed it in the Warre hive. We have both Langstroth and horizontal Langstroth, and also we have a Warre hive. And I really like that one. It's cool. And it's the sort of hive you just dump them in and forget about it. Keep adding boxes as the need arises. So, they have enough room to do what they do. But basically, we've just decided not to invest any more than that into this. If they live through the winter, yay, that's preferable. But environmentally speaking, for bees now, it's real tough. And they... No, ow, no. Go away. So anyway, what? Leave me alone. They're chewing on me. They want to be fed. It's like, no, you know how to forage. Go away. So anyway, we collected what honey we have, and we're just going to let it be the way that it is. And if they survive, great. And if they don't, well, if they do, though, hopefully they'll swarm next year. We'll get a swarm, and there'll be more bees. That happened last year. We bought a nuke, and it swarmed, and twice actually. So that's how we ended up with 5 hives last year. We should have only had 3, but we had 5 because of the swarms. So, which it's not a bad thing. Swarms are good things. So if you think, oh no, they swarm, that's a sign of a really healthy hive. So, and you get free bees out of it. So you can start a whole new colony. So anyhow, let's count 13 and see what the Morgan Greer deck has to say for us today. And of course, it's a court card. So we'll keep this out, and we'll figure out something else here. We'll pull another card. So we have the Knight of Rods, which is essentially the Knight of Wands. And yeah, you want to feed them. They were over here chewing on my leg and on my toes. Anyway, I get my husband to feed those ducks. Anyway, we have the Knight of Rods. He's got a really cool helmet, doesn't he? Knights are passionate, especially the fiery ones like the rods or the wands. He's got his wand over his shoulder. You can see it's sort of a crude club with leaves coming out of it. He's looking off into the, let's see, are we going to the future? Yes, we're looking into the future. And he's on alert, isn't he? He's ready. And that's the thing about the knight of any of the knights in the suits, they're ready. They're ready for something, anyway. And this guy, he's ready to invoke his will and passion on the world. You know, but as always, you know, with the knights, we don't necessarily know, or with any of the court cards, we don't necessarily know what they're about unless we draw another card. But we're talking about, you know, movement and action and progress. We're talking about someone who's into adventure, who's not afraid of change, um, who's passionate and eager, maybe a little bit rebellious, very enthusiastic, very protective. You know, he's got this club over his shoulder. He's ready to take care of business should he need to. He's intelligent, but basically he's a catalyst for change and action. So when when a knight shows up, you're going to be asking, okay, what's going on for today? What is going to be happening for today? What can I make happen today? Do I need to protect something? Do I need to invoke something? How am I going to express my will today in a way that maybe, and usually when you're talking court cards, even though they can be self-centered, there's also the aspect of taking care of others within that. Because if you're in the court, then you basically are in charge of the kingdom, right? In some capacity. So it's not just about self, it's also about others as well. So I probably shouldn't be so irritated at the idea of court cards, but I just think, well, you know, it's just so much more to the story when we get them. You know, but here we're talking about the fire element, which is will and passion. You know, as he's kind of asking us to take a risk, maybe. Sometimes, you know, when ill-dignified, though, those risks don't pay off, do they? So you have to kind of balance the will with maybe some intellect. So maybe our next card will show that. We'll see. Well, I've drawn this card a couple of times in the other deck, but it's a three of wands, or in this case, rods. You know, the decks may change the names of the suits. Sometimes they change the actual titles of the cards as well, especially on the major arcana. And then on the small cards, on the minor arcana cards, sometimes they'll have other names on them that don't appear in other decks. But this card is about sort of, it's like he's waiting for something to happen, but he's well prepared because he's got protection around him. It's a catalytic sort of card. The three denote synthesis, creation, divinity, and fate, I believe. But it's also about expansion. It could also be about trade. So perhaps you're waiting for something to come to fruition, or you're preparing something to come to fruition. Now it's interesting because when you look at these two cards, they're looking away from each other, aren't they? So what we're talking about here maybe is this one is concerned about future endeavors, but what he needs to understand is he can't get so carried away with the future that he forgets what he's got going on, maybe in his life or at home, maybe, or he has to stay focused on something that is already in preparation. So maybe he's going out to do that. So maybe you have got something in the hopper, so to speak, and you're waiting for, but you can see how there's a focus on, I don't want to say the past, but maybe what's already established, you know? So basically we're talking about, and because it's both the suit of rods or wands, you know, the fire suit, what we're basically looking at is as he's going off to deal with other things, he's still having to be mindful of his foundation and what's also going on in his life. Knights have a tendency, when they're dignified, to forget about that, to forget about, hey, I've got other stuff going on. Instead, they're attracted to go do something else, and they're off and running, and you don't see them for a while. Well, let's remember, if you're feeling like you want to do that, just remember, take care of business, make sure that all that's in place before you head off. Let's see though what the rune has to say. Usually it sort of brings everything into focus for us, I think. How are we doing on time here? We're almost at 11 minutes. I try to keep these things somewhere between 15 and 20 minutes. Sometimes I get ranting about what's going on in the world, and so then it's sort of, the time gets away from me. Oh, Vunyo. Vunyo is the 8th rune of the Elder Futhark, and it basically means joy. So we have the weekend coming up. Clearly, what this is saying is that we should follow our joy, follow our passion. There's a channeler, Daryl Anka, who channels Bashar, and he always talks about living in your highest joy and in your highest passion. And every time I see Vunyo, I think of that, because it's true. We can create whatever we want to, but it begins in here. All of creation, well, not here, but in the soul. But how we project our consciousness out in the world, we can be witness to all sorts of nonsense, all sorts of pain, all sorts of heartache. But if it's not being generated from us, then we have a choice how we respond to it. So we can do battle, or we can stand back and we can just look at it in observation. I'm an empath, and so for me, it's about energy connection. And if I even so much as look at somebody or just think about someone, I create a connection to them. We all do. Empaths are just more aware of it, and it tends to affect us more than it does other people. All of us are actually this way. It's just that in the veil of forgetting, when we're born, we don't necessarily remember our own source presence in the world, and empaths just don't stop experiencing that. It's very confusing when you first, discover that you're not like other people, and that you know things you shouldn't know, and you feel things that other people don't feel. You know truth that other people don't seem to realize or aren't being honest about. An empath's probably going to pick up on it. They might not know exactly what's going on, but a lot of the time they do. So it's an interesting thing to express Vunyo in your life when you're an empath, because basically what you're having to do is you're having to let go of what you're seeing and feeling, and you simply have to align and be the source presence that you are and try to engage with the world that way. Otherwise, you get caught up in all this reaction. And here, that's what this knight tends to do, is react. Being the fire suitor, of rods or wands, what he's going to do is he's going to probably react before observing. Now here, it kind of looks like he's not doing that, that he's actually taking a look before he leaps into things. And that's, I think, a really good thing to do. Right now, collectively in our country and in the world, a lot of us are experiencing a lot of triggers. We don't like what we see, and it causes great upset. The balance seems to be off. There's no mind, body, spirit alignment. People are moving from this from the position of a self-orientation. There's a lot of smoke out here. Sorry for that. They're moving from a standpoint of service to self versus service to others. You know, and the idea of service to others doesn't mean that you're not taking care of self. You are. But it's the ability to understand that we're all part of one greater collective presence, and that without the other, we don't exist. And so there might be a lot of tension. There might be, you know, the issue about the three of wands or rods. You know, you're looking at um, you see the fiery sky. So you've got some tension there. You've got some, and that's not necessarily a bad thing, because from that inner friction, from one of the runes that talks about that is Nothes, to have that inner friction to create, to manifest, you know, clearly things are percolating for this guy. And this guy's just sort of, you know, focused on something else. But the point is we cannot manifest joy if everything else around us isn't taking care of at the same time. If we're leaving things to be done, if we're not respecting what is, if we're not respecting the rights of other people, if we're not respecting that mind, body, spirit alignment when we go forth in the world, then maybe we assert our will onto other people in a way that doesn't make any sense and certainly doesn't bring joy. So however we do that today and through the weekend, however we exert our will in the world, let's do it with some compassion and love, and make that our beginning focus, and make sure that we respect the rights of others and the needs of others, and that all of that is taken into account in the decisions that we make. So So I'm still working on that blog post I said I would have done last night. I was just so tired after yesterday. I got about halfway through and I stopped. So I will finish that today, and it'll be up on the blog probably by early afternoon. I've got to go do some watering. It's not going to be quite as hot here today on the high desert. So I'd love you to go check out the blog at imsteppingaside.com. It's called Stepping Aside. I wish I just could have gotten that one, but they didn't have it. I had to do the I'm Stepping Aside thing. But anyway, go check that out. Um, See what you think. There's a lot of fun things on it. It's essentially, well, it has a grimoire on it, and it has some stuff on cannabis, and it has some stuff on Reiki and being an empath and being a witch, and just some lots of tarot and rune stuff, and so just go check it out. I've been writing it since the end of 2012, and it's got quite a body of work on it at this point. So I'm pretty proud of it, and I like how it's turned out. I think I finally found a, a theme that I like, and I've changed it a few times over the years. Even the name it used to be called Eternally Dazed and Confused because I thought I was, but then it's like, oh, no, 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 I'm not. So I changed it to, after I wrote this post called Stepping Aside. I changed. I just said, you know what? That's the name of the blog, and so that's what I did. And now I do this YouTube channel kind of in support of all of it. So thanks so much for stopping by. We'll see you next week, and have a lovely weekend. Blessed be.